For centuries, the Western philosophical tradition operated on a very simple assumption. Design comes first. Take a paper knife. Someone sketches its shape, decides its purpose, and only then is it manufactured. Its essence precedes its existence. We assumed humans worked the same way. But try to map that same logic onto a person, and the lines drop away. By the winter of 1943, the physical and moral architecture of France had disintegrated. The Republic had collapsed in 6 weeks. German soldiers occupied the streets of Paris. The traditional authorities that told you exactly who you were and what you should do had vanished. Sitting at a corner table on the first floor of the Café de Flore, Jean-Paul Sartre spent 3 hours every morning and afternoon filling notebooks. The quarter was starving. The stove upstairs was one of the few with fuel. An informer sat within earshot. A single anonymous letter could end a life. Sartre argued the occupation revealed a pre-existing reality. The Republic, the Church, and the entire moral order were human constructions all along. Their sudden collapse proved what he was writing, that no authority is reliable, and no framework can tell you the right thing to do. From this realization, Sartre derived his defining claim. Because there is no creator or pre-existing blueprint, existence precedes essence. You are thrown into the world blank. Whatever you become is the strict result of what you choose to do. You are terrifyingly free and solely responsible for those actions. Facing the total weight of that responsibility is exhausting. People naturally seek a psychological escape hatch. Sartre called this flight from absolute freedom mauvaise foi, or bad faith. He observed a waiter moving through the café. The man's gestures were a little too crisp, his eagerness slightly exaggerated. He was performing the role of waiter, the way an actor plays a character. He was treating himself as a fixed object, rather than an open project. A chair does not ask what it is. A stone does not agonize over what it should do. Pretending you are defined by your job or your societal role is comfortable because it absolves you from the burden of choosing. But your consciousness cannot fully sustain the lie. At some level, you always know you are pretending. Retreating into a fixed identity might feel like a surrender of agency, but refusing to choose is in itself an act of choice. Freedom, in this view, is not a gift. Sartre declared that human beings are condemned to be free. You did not ask to exist, but now that you do, every single moment demands an action. You write the script of your own life, and you have absolutely no one else to blame for the final draft. Simone de Beauvoir, Sartre's longtime intellectual partner, took his framework and located a massive blind spot. Radical individual freedom sounds profound on paper, but it ignores the reality of external physical restrictions. In The Second Sex, she aimed this critique directly at the concept of womanhood. If there is no fixed human nature, there is no fixed female nature. As she wrote, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." She identified the exact same bad faith that Sartre saw in the waiter, but operating on a civilizational scale. Society tells an entire sex that its essence is fixed, passive, and subordinate. It attempts to treat half the population as objects rather than free consciousnesses. Beauvoir insisted that freedom is a material condition. A woman denied education, denied economic independence, or control over her own body is not free, regardless of what ontology says about her consciousness. With this insight, existentialism shifted. It could no longer be a philosophy focused solely on internal individual choice. Achieving actual freedom demands the active material dismantling of the external structures that make choice impossible in the first place. To dismantle a powerful structure, isolated individuals cannot act alone. You have to find others and unite. But to exert actual pressure, collective action requires organized force. Sartre concluded that this fight demanded absolute political commitment. He aligned with the Soviet Union, arguing that revolutionary violence, no matter how brutal, could be justified if it served as a practical, necessary step toward building a completely just society. Albert Camus, who had sat at those same café tables, vehemently disagreed. He refused to accept Sartre's justification. For Camus, sacrificing living, breathing people in the present for a theoretical future that might never arrive was a moral failure. In The Rebel, Camus drew a sharp distinction. A rebel says no to injustice while strictly affirming human limits. A revolutionary is willing to utilize systemic murder to achieve political goals. When reports of the gulags reached Paris, Camus saw them as the exact atrocity his philosophy warned against. Sartre accused Camus of retreating into moral purity. Camus accused Sartre of complicity. Their friendship shattered permanently. It highlighted the ultimate existential trap. You have to navigate the razor-thin line between necessary political commitment and horrific moral compromise. This is an animated diagram showing how Sartre tried to resolve the tension between individual freedom and collective action. He introduced the group infusion, where isolated individuals, represented by these scattered dots, break out of their private goals to act as a single, fluid, liberating force. But philosopher Leszek Kolakowski pointed out a fatal flaw. The group cannot remain in this state of pure, spontaneous fusion. To survive over time, the collective must solidify into an organized body. It becomes an institution. And as it solidifies, the new structure develops its own hierarchies. To maintain its power, the group begins to demand loyalty from its members. It asks you to enforce silence on the points where you disagree, and eventually suppresses your individual judgment entirely. You experience this tension today. When you hit a restriction based on your gender, your background, or your skin color, you know that resisting alone won't break the system. You have to find others. You have to organize. This is your final existential paradox. You are condemned to fight for your freedom alongside a group, but you must remain permanently vigilant, because the very solidarity that gives you power is always threatening to harden into the next prison you must escape.